Hello, good morning, class. So today we will discuss the first topic of the history of modern class, um, which is identity. And today you will learn from this learning video because I cannot be present today. So instead of meeting in class, you will only have to watch this video and then do the assignments for the presentation later. So when we talk about identity, the big question for all of us is the question of who am I? Because the answer to these questions usually be more than one answer. It can be many answers, depends on who asks you, where you are, when you are asked, in what context. So these questions is very tricky because it cannot fully explain your identity. It just probably gives an answer to one aspect of your self. So maybe the most common answer to this question, who am I, is well, let's say from the point of view of existentialism, then I am a human being, for example, or I'm a living being. So that's probably the more or the most philosophical, easiest way of answering that. But it doesn't really tell who you are because every human will probably say the same thing. So the questions of who am I is complicated, and it has lots of aspects that will all help construct or build who you actually are as a human being. So related to the previous questions of who am I, then the second question, the more basic question is what is identity? Apa itu identitas? Because as I said, that identity of someone really depends on who that person is when he's talking with whom, where, and how. Those are all aspects of identity that can help explaining someone. And this is a simple, um, let's say, a picture or illustration of what identity looks like, and we can see that there are lots of branches of identity, which shows the complexity of identity. So let's say when someone asks you who you are, oh, I am a pious Christian, let's say, it means that you look yourself more as a religious person, which means that in one of the branches you will look at beliefs as your uh, dominant, let's say, a trait of yourself. So you are seen, you want to be seen more like as a religious person, so you say that you are, like, say, pious Christian. But if someone tell someone else who ask him or her who they are, and then they answer, oh, I am the owner of that big company, for example. Now, it means that the branch of identity that that person use is the object or possession here on the upper left, because he or she identifies him or herself with what they possess, not what they are. And then someone also asks who you are. Oh, I'm a singer. So it means that your identity is mostly dominated by the aspect of interest or your passion, yeah, or your hobbies. Uh, and then if someone say, who are you? Oh, I'm a Chinese Indonesian. So it means that you look at yourself more from the ethnicity point of view. So as you can see, all these branches uh, is probably not all the branches out there. So there may be more branches of identity, but this tells us that identity cannot be defined by just one aspect, because it only tells part of yourself, of who yourself, but it doesn't tell who you really are as a whole, because it's quite difficult to, uh, let's say, construct a whole identity of oneself, as there are so many branches and it depends on whatever choices you are when you're introducing yourself. So this is the reason why when we talk about identity, it's always debatable. It's always, there's always a struggle against claiming one's identity, because there are so many branches, and plus there's the social construction of identity, which probably not right, depending on the context. And if we look at ourselves and others, maybe the easiest signifier or sign for identity is our physical body. So maybe we don't know someone, but we remember that, oh, I think he has a curly hair. So or he is or she is very thin, or she has a long hair, or she is bald. So basically, the easiest way to identify someone is from their physical body. And the second one, which is also quite important, is from your name. Your name, that name is very important, but it is something that you do not choose, right? Because you, whatever your name is, you have no involvement whatsoever in finding that name. It's your parents' choice. So whether you like it or not, but that's your name, and that will stick to you for the rest of your life, in your ID card, wherever you go, in your passport. So name is one fundamental signifier, and that also can be problematic, especially when you have a certain name that probably uh, is deemed to be suspicious for other countries, for example. And name can be problematic in that way. So maybe you can also reflect to your own names, whether you like your name, whether you don't like your name, or what the meaning of your name is. You know the meaning of it. So yeah, there's a lot of thing also just from the signifier of identity, which is name. Maybe you remember the quotation from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, when Juliet said that, "What's in the name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Apalah artinya sebuah nama gitu ya. Bunga mawar disebut apapun itu tetap akan wangi seperti bunga mawar. Jadi di satu sisi name is important, but in the other side, maybe name is just, yeah, it's just let's say we would say it's a stamp. Yeah, it's a stamp that says who you are. It's just something that people put as the identifier of ourselves. So when we talk about name, name can be either political, cultural, ethnical, or others. For example, political name. For example, the term third world countries. This term is coined in 1950s to signify those countries outside the Western and Soviet world during Cold War. So when we heard third world countries, it actually a name which is well, it probably not correct, yeah, in a way politically correct, because it looks down on countries which are not developed yet. So these third world countries is a political name given by the Western and Soviet Union to other countries that they look or see as not in the same level as they are. And what about the example of cultural names? Well, if you look at Chinese or Korean name, they usually have two or three words like Kim So Hyun, Hyun Bin, Chao Wei, Liu, Chen Ziyuan. Jadi itu adalah signifier cultural. So every time we find someone with two or three names, they are either Asian, Korean, yeah, or Chinese with that short words that contains 2 or 3 words. And then the ethnical, well, we can look at the example from Indonesia when we heard someone called Joko, usually from Java, and then Abimanyu also from Java, but Bonar is usually Batak, and then Asep, yeah, usually Sunda, and those are ethnical names. So we can probably guesstimate who your friend is from their name. You can guess their ethnicity. You may also can guess their religion from their names, but it doesn't always happen like that. But most often you can tell your friends in class where they come from just by looking at their names, and then you can tell. Yeah. So again, now you can reflect on your own name. So what about your name? What does it mean? Do you like your name? If you don't like your name, do you have you ever thought about changing your name? And if you do, what names do you think suit you more than your name today? So please reflect yourself about this one simple signifier of identity that is your name. And so, talking about identity, there are lots of identity theory out there, and I would like to introduce to you social identity theory, or SIT, SIT. So, what is a social identity theory? So, in simply put, social identity theory explains relations between large social groups using psychological process concerning social identity, an individual's sense of belonging to a group, and the positive or negative feelings associated with that membership. So it is not about individual identity, but how one person relates to other persons in a group of in a society, or in a group of society, and how they identify themselves with that group, and they try to uh, find this sense of belonging to the group, and the along with the positive and negative feelings associated with that membership of the group. So I think uh, because humans are social being, they tend to live in flock, and they tend to try to associate themselves with certain group because they need power and in groups, because if they are alone they have no power, but if they are a member of a group, at least they are power, and then there's a protection from the group, so we feel more safer, and also we feel that we belong to something. So if one wants to summarize the social identity theory, uh, we would say that people, including us, have an apparent inherent desire to distinguish themselves from others based on group memberships, and their willingness to sacrifice to maintain relative superiority over members of other groups. So let's say when you were um, in your first year, you identify yourself as a group member of the Faculty of Languages and Cultures, because that's where you were studying. So you associate yourself. So you want to be close to your group, because there's a desire for you to be accepted in your group because you belong to that membership. And sometimes there's a willingness to sacrifice, well, not of course not extreme sacrifice, but you probably will maintain the good name of the faculty or the department that you are in, and then we of course try to maintain superiority, although it doesn't mean negatively, but we would like to be look like superior than others. We want to be the best, or at least better than other group members. And this is not only in campus, but you probably have your own group outside campus that you think that it is important for me to be able to show my uh, loyalty to the group. Yeah, that you want to do anything to make your group remain superior or better than others. So in terms of the social identity theory, the SIT also identify the negative effect of this kind of um, social theory, because this kind of group feeling also create discriminations towards other who are not part of their group. So according to SIT, the categorization of our social world is natural, so it's just inevitable. Every humans wants to be in part of a social group, and it serves to simplify our environment, so we can say, oh, this is a group of this, the member of this countries, or you belong to this ethnicity, you belong to this city, and so on. So that is a very natural thing, and it's inevitable. Every human will make a group one way or another. So as we categorize people into different groups, oh, you do not belong to this group, you belong to that group, and so on and so forth. We also categorize ourselves into some of those groups, which called a social identification. So there will be identification from others when they look at us. For example, someone, if you come out from the campus, and then people around the campus, like maybe the seller, a food seller, food stall, they will identify you. Oh, you belong uh, to the university. You're students there, so your social identification. One of them is that you're a member of the Maranatha. So once we belong to a group, or we call in group, we always seek ways to gain positive feelings from that group membership. Of course, this is very natural, because if you belong to some groups, you always want to have positive feelings, because we will not try to find negative feelings, because that's what you don't need that, because you need to be in group and you need to find something positive from that group that you are in. And viewing the in-group more positively than other groups is one way to achieve those positive feelings. So let's say someone compares yourself to students from other university, and those people say that, oh, our university is better than your university. So that feeling is uh, very normal, because everyone will think that our group is more positive than other groups out there, and that is the seeds of discrimination, where we always see ourselves more positive than others, but that's not wrong, it's just the way it is. So seeking positive distinctiveness for one's in-group hence becomes an explanation for holding negative beliefs, because if you see yourself positive, then you will find uh, then you will know or want to know what is negative, and usually the negative belongs to other groups, because you don't want that negative in your group, so you always reflect the negative part or negative aspects uh, into other groups. So here, for holding negative beliefs and attitudes about outgroups in our environment, and hence for prejudice and ultimately discrimination. Of course, this is an extreme way, but this is how the social identification work. You find positive feelings in your group, but at the same time, positive cannot live without negative, and you have to also seek for negative thing, and that will be projected into the out groups or a group outside your group, and that will lead to prejudice and discrimination. And so, after all this discrimination, prejudice coming from other people who look at our groups negatively, for example, there are strategies usually taken by the minority or the marginalized group, or orang-orang atau kelompok yang termarginalisasi, because they have no power, because they are not the majority. Usually they have strategies to cope with this feeling or this prejudice. The first strategy is called a social mobility strategy. Uh, this is this means that one will leave one in group for a different, more socially valued group. So let's say if you have a group of friends, and then you feel that you are, uh, your group is not as good as other groups, then maybe you want to leave the group and find another group that also can accept you. So that's another one strategy, is to leave your group and then go into another group that is much better in your opinion and also can accept you. The second strategy is called social change belief system. This is an attempt to make their in-group's position more desirable. Let's say you're a minority, but one way to uh, enhance the position of your group is to make your group more desirable for others. For example, this happens in the US. Uh, the US civil rights movement, yeah, uh, they this movement is the purpose of this movement is to make uh, the Black American or the African Americans to have a more desirable feeling towards other groups, or international movements for women's suffrage, Black South African struggle against apartheid. So all of these movements are strategies by the minority uh, to be heard, yeah, so that their group can be heard, and then their group can be seen as, oh, yeah, this group is fighting for something, uh, something right, something that is supposed to be done by others, and that, and then lots of other groups will feel sympathy, and then will fight also for your cause, and so your group become more desirable. So that's the second strategy, social change belief system. And the third strategy is called social creativity strategy. So this is the way that minority finds alternative dimensions on which they can compare themselves to an outgroup, or finding alternate outgroups to serve as comparisons. Jadi mencari dimensi alternatif ketika mereka, di mana mereka bisa membandingkan diri mereka dengan kelompok lain, atau mencari outgroup lain untuk dijadikan uh, sebagai pembanding gitu. Jadi misalnya um, ada etnis minoritas di satu negara yang berhasil menjadi pusat perhatian dari mayoritasnya, sehingga uh, etnis minoritas ini dihargai. Nah, kita mungkin mencari juga membandingkan etnis kita dengan etnis itu, apa yang bisa kita lakukan supaya kita bisa mendapatkan posisi yang sama seperti etnis yang berhasil tadi. Nah, itu adalah social creativity strategy. Jadi kita lihat dulu, oh, kita sekarang minoritas, we are marginalized, we want to be more desirable. What we should be do? Well, let's do some study, find other groups out there who also pretty much in the same position like us, and then look what they do, and we can probably make a comparison and do the same strategy with them. That's the third strategy. So now let's look at the social identity theory and the media, because nowadays media has become one of the most significant instruments for any groups, either it is in groups or out groups, to really promote themselves. And at the same time, media can also become the instrument of media that can marginalize certain groups. So the questions of who makes the media is becoming an important one, because usually if someone have a media and that person wants to, let's say, uh, create prejudice about other groups, then that person can easily do it because he has control over the media. So media embody and represent the social hierarchy of group status. Thus, phenomena like media ownership, uh, who owns television stations, networks, newspapers, social media, are non-trivial factors in understanding how individuals relate to the media in the intergroup terms. It means that media can easily create this hierarchy of group status. We can see if we look at news on TV, what kind of group, society group that they mostly portray, and what society group that they never portray, or when they are portrayed negatively, for example. So the media can pretty much tweak or exploit, yeah, how the audience will see certain groups, because they have the power to create or to construct certain prejudice or position of certain groups of society. And minority-owned media are more likely to include portrayals of minority group members, feature news and other content of interest to minority group members, and hence support the social identities of those group members. For example, we in Indonesia, we have big media like MNC, or the what is it, belongs to the Nasdem politician, yeah, Metro TV. Those are big media, Gramedia. But there are smaller media like, let's say, TVRI Jawa Barat, and we can see that the TVRI Jawa Barat, as the minority-owned media, they will more likely to portray Sundanese people, activities like Sundanese language program and so on, because they are minority. And so this minority-owned media, just like the second point says, will include portrayal of minority group members, and in more specific, yeah, instead of the big media who usually portray a general thing but never or seldom portray the minority. Okay, let me show one more. So social identity explains such representations as a function of intergroup distinctiveness. Jadi identitas sosial menjelaskan representasi-representasi yang tadi itu, yang negatif, sebagai fungsi dari bagaimana ada perbedaan dari antar grup gitu ya. Jadi representasi-representasi ini menjadi suatu bentuk dari adanya perbedaan-perbedaan antar grup yang ada. Jadi social identity itu menjelaskan hal-hal tersebut. Dan kemudian pertanyaan berikutnya, how do group processes drive media selection? Jadi bagaimana seleksi-seleksi yang dilakukan media ini diproses atau dikendalikan oleh grup-grup yang ada, social group tadi. Individuals actively seek content that meets their needs and matches their interests. Some of this active seeking is driven by social identity motives. Jadi individu yang secara aktif mencari konten yang sesuai dengan kebutuhan mereka dan cocok dengan keinginan mereka. Gitu. Some of this active seeking is driven by social identity motives. Jadi biasanya kalau kita sebagai bagian dari kelompok suatu etnis dan kemudian kita melihat potret kita di media, maka kita akan selalu mencari konten yang cocok gitu, yang sesuai dengan keinginan kita. Kalau enggak ya kita nggak akan tonton gitu, atau nggak akan lihat. Tapi kalau iya, maka itulah yang kita cari sebagai motif kita untuk semakin mengidentifikasikan diri kita dengan kelompok tersebut. People typically prefer content featuring in group members. Jadi secara umum, secara natural, kita semua pasti akan secara tipikal mencari atau memilih konten-konten media yang menunjukkan anggota-anggota in group member kita, dan mencari secara aktif gitu ya. Misalnya kita anggota grup sesuatu, kemudian kita cari, oh di mana ya, di kita YouTube ada nggak ya cerita mengenai ini, dicari secara aktif. Dan by doing so, receive identity related gratification. Jadi kita merasa bangga, ada gratifikasi bahwa oh kita juga bagian dari grup kelompok tersebut, dan kelompok tersebut sangat bagi saya sangat menginspirasi. Jadi kita bangga gitu. Kita hanya cuma menonton, tapi dengan menonton itu kita menerima semacam gratifikasi gitu ya, dari hasil positif dari media yang menunjukkan kelompok kita. Kemudian, hence, lalu the media, assuming positive in-group representation are available, can serve as a support system for marginalized identities. Jadi sebetulnya media, meskipun itu media mainstream, harusnya bisa menjadi suatu sistem support system bagi mereka yang termarginalisasikan identitasnya, seperti etnis minoritas dan sebagainya. Tapi can also be selectively consumed by dominant group members in ways that reduce exposure to portrayal of marginalized groups. Tapi bisa juga secara selektif dikonsumsi oleh anggota-anggota kelompok dominan yang secara tidak langsung itu malah mengurangi exposure dari kelompok-kelompok marginalized yang lain gitu ya. Jadi di satu sisi dia bisa membantu, tapi di sisi lain karena medianya pengen laku, jadi dia hanya memunculkan representasi kelompok-kelompok dominan yang mainstream karena ya itu yang menjual gitu kan, karena penontonnya lebih banyak. Jadi mereka akhirnya kehilangan tidak punya lagi program untuk etnis minoritas, akhirnya malah jadi mengurangi ya, reduce exposure to portrayal of marginalized groups. Jadi media ini bisa dua sisi ya, di sisi satu bisa mengangkat, tapi di sisi lain bisa menenggelamkan juga, bergantung dari ideologi mereka. Jika ingin mereka lebih ke ingin ditonton banyak orang, ya mungkin mereka akan memunculkan yang dominan. Tapi kalau mereka ingin mendukung yang marginalized, mereka akan memunculkan portrayal-portrayal dari representasi kelompok-kelompok yang tidak dominan gitu, yang marginalized. Jadi apakah efek dari identitas sosial yang berhubungan dengan media ini, efeknya apa? Untuk anggota-anggota dari komunitas-komunitas yang minoritas atau yang marginalized, media sebetulnya bisa mensupport mereka atau identitas mereka dengan menyediakan atau providing positive models of the in-groups. Jadi misalnya ada kelompok etnis ini, ya kita munculkanlah, media itu memunculkan sesuatu yang positif mengenai kelompok minoritas tersebut. Beyond positive portrayals, media can also model group activism, thus building support for social change belief system. Jadi selain secara positif menunjukkan etnis minoritas, misalnya, media juga bisa menjadi membuat model activism group gitu ya, yang akan membangun support dalam social change belief system. Untuk anggota-anggota dari grup-grup yang dominan, exposure yang positif ini terhadap orang-orang marginalized itu dapat mengurangi prejudis atau prasangka buruk. Ya, jadi misalnya kelompok dominan memiliki prejudis mengenai kelompok yang lain yang lebih marginalized. Nah, kemudian lewat media ternyata dimunculkan, oh ternyata nggak seperti itu, maka si kelompok dominan ini akan merasa, oh ternyata pandangan saya salah terhadap kelompok minoritas tersebut gitu ya. Jadi akhirnya bisa menghilangkan prejudis. Jadi ini efeknya gitu ya, ketika ada media yang menunjukkan portrayal dari minoritas, maka yang mayoritas yang menonton mungkin akan mengalami efek bahwa mereka tidak salah dalam melihat kelompok tersebut, misalnya memiliki prasangka buruk yang ternyata salah. Itu adalah efek dari media yang terkait dengan social identity. Nah, dalam konteks new media atau yang saat ini kita ada, misalnya kita punya internet dan banyak sekali OTT platform media dan berita yang sangat banyak, the internet provides massively increased ability to find content supportive of social identities. Jadi kalau dulu kan cuma TV ya, kita cuma bisa berapa channel doang, that's it. Kita nggak bisa mencari kemana-mana lagi. Tapi dengan adanya internet, YouTube, dan sebagainya, kita bisa dengan sangat mudah dan begitu banyak konten-konten yang bisa mensupport identitas-identitas sosial. Berbagai bangsa, berbagai etnis, berbagai kelompok dimanapun pasti ada. Produksinya tidak mahal, kemudian distribusinya juga tidak mahal karena cuma tinggal ngupload video. Jadi akan lebih mudah buat para kelompok-kelompok minoritas atau memang marginalized ini untuk menciptakan konten yang lebih positif. Jadi daripada menggantungkan diri kepada media yang besar, dengan internet ini dengan lebih murah, kelompok-kelompok marginalized tersebut bisa dengan mudah menciptakan konten yang positif mengenai diri mereka sendiri untuk mereka menunjukkan identitas sosial mereka seperti apa kepada dunia. Tapi di satu sisi, karena tidak adanya aturan yang jelas ya, unregulated nature of internet content, maka juga di satu sisi semakin mudah untuk menyebarkan hal-hal negatif seperti hate speech atau intergroup violence gitu. Jadi di satu sisi menjadi media yang memudahkan kelompok-kelompok marginalized, tapi di sisi lain juga memudahkan kelompok-kelompok pembenci atau yang memang radikal untuk bisa mendiseminasikan hate speech mereka. Jadi internet ini seperti pisau bermata dua gitu ya. Di satu sisi bisa positif, tapi di satu sisi lain jika ada yang ingin hal-hal menunjukkan hal-hal hoax dan sebagainya, menyebarkan hate speech dan sebagainya dengan mudah pun bisa dilakukannya. Itu adalah bisa dikatakan dilema dari media new media saat ini. Baik, jadi setelah kita tadi belajar mengenai identitas itu apa, kemudian social identity theory itu apa, maka ada dua tugas. Yang pertama tugas individual, yaitu Anda hanya tinggal mengisi dua hal, yaitu personal and social identity wheel. Jadi nanti saya akan upload di morning, kalian bisa print out, dan dalam wheel itu sama seperti tadi identitas itu kan ada branch-branchnya, dan di situ pun sama ada Anda, kemudian ada berbagai pertanyaan, ada berbagai aspek di sekitarnya seperti roda. Yang satu itu personal, yang satu lagi sosial. Jadi saya ingin Anda mengisi kedua-duanya, pilih mana yang paling bisa merepresentasikan diri Anda. Jadi bisa saja Anda pilih misalnya personal itu banyak sekali, nah kita bisa pilih banyak gitu ya, saya itu yang ini gitu, atau bisa cuma satu dua, terserah, pokoknya apapun yang menurut Anda paling bisa mendeskripsikan siapa Anda sebagai individu personal. Nah, kalau yang social identity itu dalam konteks Anda sebagai kelompok dari suatu society member gitu ya, dari suatu society group. Jadi yang kedua itu social identity itu terkait Anda dan kelompok yang Anda belong to, oke? Jadi sama, bisa satu, bisa dua, bisa banyak. Pokoknya diisi, tidak ada betul salah karena ini adalah Anda sendiri yang menilai identitas Anda itu seperti apa. Apakah seperti ini sebagai personal dan seperti ini sebagai anggota dari suatu social group. Dan tugas kedua adalah group assignment. Ini untuk presentasi nanti bulan Oktober ya. Jadi seperti saya sudah katakan, di tanggal 21 September seharusnya memang ada pertemuan, tapi karena ada dies natalis sehingga tidak bisa ada kelas, maka melewati learning videos ini. Dan kemudian minggu depannya lagi tanggal 28 itu kita self studies ya. Jadi kita tidak bertemu di kelas, tapi kamu bertemu dengan kelompok kamu untuk membahas pertanyaan kedua ini. Dan presentasinya nanti di minggu berikutnya lagi di awal Oktober. Dan tugasnya yang untuk group presentation ini silakan ikuti guidelines yang berikut. So your group must choose one real case that relate to identity issues. Jadi misalnya apapun itu di luar negeri, di Indonesia, dimanapun, pokoknya harus kasus beneran, gitu, kasus nyata yang terkait dengan isu-isu identitas. Yang kedua, case-nya itu tadi saya sudah bilang bisa terkait dengan identitas individu, identitas kelompok, ethnicity, atau bahkan bangsa. Dan ketiga, silakan elaborasikan isu identitas apa yang muncul dalam kasus Anda. Apakah ini kasus terkait dengan bagaimana media merepresentasikan secara negatif, atau apakah ini dalam konteks misalnya identitas yang seperti ini tidak diakui oleh mayoritas misalnya dan seterusnya. Jadi apa sih isunya yang kamu angkat dari kasus yang kamu pilih? Dan kemudian kaitkan posisi dari media apapun dalam menunjukkan kasus tersebut gitu ya. Jadi saya yakin kasus yang kamu ambil itu pasti pernah disinggung oleh media apapun ya. Tinggal sampaikan bagaimana media yang kamu temukan itu menempatkan dirinya di mana ketika dia menggambarkan kasus tersebut gitu ya. Apakah sebagai yang support, apakah sebagai yang marginalized atau seterusnya. Dan kemudian ini dalam opini kalian sebagai kelompok, apa sebenarnya sih solusi yang baik untuk mengatasi isu identitas dalam kasus yang kamu pilih. Jadi ini benar-benar opini pribadi kamu. Misalnya ada satu kasus, silakan menurut kamu seperti apa solusinya. Oke, jadi akan dipresentasikan di meeting keempat tanggal 5 Oktober. Jadi nanti tugas yang individual pun bisa dikumpulkan di tanggal yang sama, di tanggal 4. Jadi kalian nanti, tanggal 5 Oktober. Nanti kalian tinggal download dan kemudian print out saja ya, dua will itu ya, social and personal identity wills. Diisi pakai tangan, tulis-tulis nanti kasih nama terus dikumpulkan di tanggal 5 Oktober. Baik, itu adalah akhir dari presentasi untuk hari ini. Terima kasih. Thank you for watching and I'll see you on the 5th of October. And if you have any questions, you can put them in morning or in our WhatsApp group, okay? Okay, so don't hesitate to ask anything if you don't feel sure about something. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.